what's the history of service design in Switzerland? And the short answer is it's a deeply cultural one. It's a very and a deep one. But first, this is a very shitty first draft. So this history is not like the history, it's one. And, usually when I do this kind of stuff, the value is that it gets other people say, I disagree with that. Or, oh, I have so many more informations to share than what you have written. And that really then helps to go to the next prototype. And that's really the goal with this one, as I did with the book, A Tiny History of Service Design. So many people commented with, oh, you forgot this one, which is so important. And that's exactly what we want here. So we're just putting it here outside so that people who have more knowledge but usually don't speak have now an opportunity to comment and speak. That's really the goal that we have here. The other thing is I'm not a historian. I'm just someone who really loves service design and is quite good at Googling. That's basically the two skills I have. So take everything here with a grain of salt. And a few of the elements that I will present today are from this book, A Tiny History of Service Design, that I published a few years ago. You'll find it online in a readable format in a blog post, but you can also get it in PDF form if you prefer. And the goal now is for this talk is to speak about the past, a little bit about the present, and the future will be more for the conversation bit that will be out of this recording. The one part I might be more excited about is the conversation bit, obviously, but I think we usually need a bit of content to inspire the conversation. So let's jump right into it with the past. Let's start with a bit of some key Swiss history dates that shaped the service design culture. So Switzerland has a bit of a specific way of handling different cultures. It's a bit of a weird country. And I think this weirdness really can inspire service designers in Switzerland, but also service designers outside of Switzerland. And it shows also, I think, why there are some specific elements in the Swiss service culture, with that, like in the topic of co-creation, which are maybe more advanced than in other countries. But let's jump right into it. The first date that I will share here is 10,000 before Christ, which is a very, 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 very long time ago. And that's where historians say we have agriculture coming in, specialization. And, that's the moment where you have the first service, where now I can say, okay, guy, I'm really good at planting stuff. But now I need someone to help me on that. And this person then provides a service for you. But also the first service is one which is very, very funny, which is priests. Priests, because of agriculture, now you have people who can focus all their attention on praying for good weather. And this is purely a service because they don't provide any tangible value. They don't give you a carrot, they don't give you a dead animal to eat, but they give you something which is intangible, but that still creates a lot of value for you because you feel safer, you feel listened, all the stuff that we speak about in service design. So, priests might be some of the first service designer or service providers in history. And with this date of 10,000 before Christ around there, we have the separations of tasks that allows to have these first services. When I speak to my wife, who is a pastor, and I tell her that priests are the first service designers, she laughs at me, but I think that's true. Then we go further, and that's the moment where we are more specific about Switzerland, 9,000 before Christ. That's the first moment where we see that there might be some humans in Switzerland. Switzerland, very harsh place, with the mountains and all the glaciers and all of that stuff. So we have the first crazy people who said, we want to come there. And, you don't have any services without humans. So this is a very important date for us as service designers working or interested in working in Switzerland. And then we have a first image that comes here. For some who have been in history class in Switzerland, that might remind you something, which is something called the Landesgemeinde. So now we have a term in German, but basically what is a Landesgemeinde? It's a public, non-secret ballot voting system operated by a majority. Basically, it's a bit of a, it's the community saying, hey, we have to vote on very important stuff. Let's bring everybody together in a circle and let's say, okay, who wants to say that this person is great? Oh, yes, I agree. Okay, cool. And then if you have a majority, then everybody agrees that this person is awesome. And that's to 1231. So it's quite old. And this shows that this first notions, of co-creation, these first notions of having people involved in how things are run, is something that is quite old in Switzerland. Another image. So here we have very proud guys. And what do these proud guys do? This is 1291, the founding of Switzerland. At least that's kind of the mythical date that we use in the history books. And there is one thing that for me is interesting, at least in French we say it like that, which is that Switzerland is a state of will. It's a state of people that have decided to be together, but still are very different and agree to that, which is something quite interesting. Many other states, it's more like a king who comes and says, okay, now we all together, and if you don't agree, we're going to kill you, and we're going to force a language, we're going to force rules. And here it's very different. Here it's different regions that say we will be stronger together, but still we want to keep some independence. And I think that's something that is very special, and that we find again in this notion of service design, when we say, hey, we have different people making a service, stakeholders, partners, but we don't believe that there is one party that rules over everyone, but rather that all of these pieces brought together are stronger, but still have individuality. I think that's again something which is quite inspiring to see that we have this notion of state of will. So imagine what is a service where people are brought together and say, we are a service of will and not a forced service, but one that we want to be together and we see value in being together. Another funny image, we see here people dancing. What are they dancing about? This was 1815, where Switzerland, I'm not sure about all the details, but from what I understood, was kind of forced into neutrality, just because Switzerland was very good at war, had very good soldiers, and that's the moment where Switzerland agreed, at least, or decided to go into a more neutral position with wars. And to me, why is that interesting? Because in service design, a lot of the time, the service designer is a bit of a facilitator, try to make things work and not be like the one saying it's like that or you're wrong, but more having a neutral position, trying to bring everybody together and giving a voice to everyone. And so again, here we see that this topic of neutrality for us as Swiss people might be a bit not so old if we look at that. Yes, it's not that old compared to the history of Switzerland, but still it's something that is very ingrained in our culture. Fancy hotels, fancy stuff. Now, what do we mean with that? That's a date which is 1858. That's the start of mass tourism in Switzerland. You might Google this stuff with the Grand Tour, which is this tour of Europe that people did, and people also came in Switzerland. And then you have this tour where there is a specific pass that you take, and on this pass you have then hotels coming out with new services and new offerings for the tourists. And why is tourism so important for service design in Switzerland? It's because it's one of the most important areas in terms of job offers, but also in terms of education. You see, a lot of education and service design is performed by schools and universities that are focused on tourism. And so I think there is something quite interesting here, where we see that in Switzerland, service design is uh, pushed, educated by this touristic industry, the hospitality industry, where in other countries, it might be more the banks, the big or the public services. Here it's more tourism, which again says something quite interesting about the notion of hospitality that we have, at least that we hope we have in Switzerland. Another image, okay. What does this woman say? Basically, she shows us something interesting, which is the introduction of the referendum. So 1874, in Switzerland now you have a new tool that allows the public to get even closer in deciding stuff. So what is a referendum? A referendum is a general vote by the electorate on a single political question that has been referred to them for a direct decision. So basically, it's something that we say, hey, do we want more roads in Switzerland? Yes or no. People vote, and the majority wins, and we go with that decision. So here we have this very direct way of interacting with big decisions that change the lives of people. But how does that relate to service design, you might ask? This is an example, very, very practical, but very funny, from Migros. Migros is one of the biggest shopping centers in Switzerland. And in the last months, they put to vote to all the members of the Migros, and everyone can be a member. So my wife, for example, she is a member, because it's a very common thing. Because you got some discounts and some lovely stuff like that. But you also get a vote. And this Migros shop is one where for years they never sold alcohol. And they made a votation, which was, do we now change? Do we now offer alcohol in our shops? Yes or no? And then the public voted and decided if it was yes or no. And they made two beers. The yes beer, which had alcohol, and the no beer, which had no alcohol. And based on the results on the votation, they have then put into production the right beer, which now we have a no beer in Switzerland, which is produced by Migros based on this referendum made by a company. So this is quite interesting. A company not giving just to the shareholders, the classical shareholders, the big guys, something to vote, but also the very normal people who shop in the business and can decide something as meaningful as deciding, do we have alcohol in our shop or not? Which is something quite, it says something about the business, this kind of decisions. Then 1891, we have the introduction of popular initiatives. So here, it's something where people can bring something to the vote. So where people say, hey, this is important to us, and now we want everyone to vote on that. There are actually technicalities, obviously. You need to have enough people who are interested in the topic to make all the 8 million people vote for it. That's kind of like the logical stuff. But it's now, again, another tool that pushes the co-creative part of the Swiss politics. And again, it's stuff used by companies. I'm going again with Migros because it's kind of a funny example to use. It's quite well known in Switzerland. They have something which is called Wikipedia. And on Wikipedia, it's kind of like their crowdsourcing platform. And there, you can share your ideas. You can share your ideas for new products, for improvements. And, there are really products that came out in the shops because of this initiative. And so it's quite interesting to see that something that dates back to 1891 is used also today by businesses to make their businesses more co-creative. So now we looked at...
Daniele?
Yes?
Daniele, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can I make a comment on the previous slide about the popular initiative?
Yes, you might.
Yeah, following that, just to tell you that voting is a national sport in Switzerland. And just to complement all the facts you're providing that are very interesting, is that we say that on the planet, on average, each year we've got 180 popular votes, okay? And we've got 90 popular votes that are Swiss votes, just to show that it's a national sport following that initiative.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. This really shows how big the co-creative side of Switzerland is. Let's go a bit outside of the history books and more in stuff that is related to a bit nearer to service design. Let's say it like that. This is an image that Manuel, who just spoke before, might love. Exactly, he's smiling already. And why is that? Because this is César Ritz. You might know the Ritz-Carlton hotels, very famous for their hospitality and their very customer-centric approach. And they said, César Ritz said around 1880, this sentence, which is, the client is never wrong, which then was reused in an opposite way, which was the client is always right. And I think this again shows that not only it's something very political, the deep co-creative side of Switzerland, but it's also something that is then very richly seen in the touristic industry. Maybe Manuel has a bit of an extra element to share on that. If you want, you can go.
Yeah. So probably, and that's an expression we're using in every part of the world, but maybe you hear the client is king. Okay, the king, and it was coined for the first time by César Ritz.
Wonderful, thanks.
So to tell you the influence he had on service design.
Exactly. One sentence that we all know, that we all use, is the one that has been pushed by someone who came again from the touristic industry. And I think the touristic industry has something very interesting with this notion of we are really serving, literally serving people. And I think that's, again, something that is quite inspiring. Again, let's continue. Now we go much nearer. Let's put a bit, let's make all the technology that we have today look a bit fun. 1965. You see that I'm a big fan of Migo, and we have a lot of stuff about Migo here. 1965, the Migo guys, they have the first self checkout in a shop. Imagine that. Today, a few years ago, you had Amazon making big headlines because there were the shop where people could enter and shop by themselves, and everybody thought, "Oh, this is so amazing! This is so innovative." But you had already in the 60s people working on that. Interestingly, they did it for I think 4 years, and they stopped. I don't know the reasons for that stuff, but it seemed to not work at that moment. Maybe the technology wasn't right, or the ways and the culture wasn't right. But we see that again, stuff that we take for granted or very innovative today can always date back to earlier times, which can also inspire us. And this is the moment where I have to say that I love someone else than my wife, which is, maybe you know that person. This is Lynn Showstack. And this is someone who I find extremely interesting because she is someone who is not that much on the stage, but she is someone who made a lot for service design. Because in 1982, Lynn Showstack invented the term service design. or she was the one that brought it really to be something that was known. And interesting here is that this notion of service design came from the world of marketing. And that, again, is something interesting. When we say, oh, services, we think often of insurance or tourism. And then here we have it from a completely other perspective, which is marketing. And she was an executive in the banking industry. By the way, she just put out a book, a memoir about her life, which is, you don't find a lot about her. But now she put out a memoir, and you can find a lovely video on YouTube, I think from her husband, who comments the memoir. And I think that's it gives you a very interesting piece, very interesting pieces of knowledge, because you see how she not only brought service design to life, but also made a lot of other things, which are very inspiring, and how she felt as a woman in this kind of high stages back in the 80s. So deeply inspiring person, and I think we owe her a lot. I often call her the mom of service design, and the second mom by being the founder of the Service Design Network, because we always need two moms. And that brings us to the Service Design Network, which is this big community of people wanting to bring service design further. And this was created in 2004. That's now we are very much in today's dates. It was created back then by the Cologne International School of Design, the Carnegie Mellon University, I have no idea how to pronounce it, Linköpings University, and the Politecnico di Milano, and the Davos Academy. So these are the universities that brought it together as a service design network, which is quite well known today, which is present in a lot of countries, and which is at the country level really made by volunteers. And I think this is also something that is deeply inspiring. I see a lot of bravos and a lot of loves coming out, which is always nice. And then 2014, that's the first trace I was able to find of someone having the title service designer in their job, in their role description. So this is kind of like the first one that I found, but I'm sure there might be before. And I'm quite excited to have comments from people telling me, oh, but I have been a service designer already in 2002 in Switzerland. But we always need to put the date out there so that people can then say it's wrong. So take this one with a grain of salt, but at least you're going to help for the conversation. Another image comes out here, an office, sticky notes. What's that office? We see here very urban. This is in Zurich, where Fjord in 2016 opens a studio in Switzerland. So Fjord is or was, because they changed the name now, and now they are called Accenture Song, I think, was back then one of the leading service design studios worldwide. And why is this important? Not because it's just a consultancy, but because it's one of the big consultancies coming to Switzerland and offering service design as their main offering. And that's quite important. There were smaller consultancies that existed before, one-man shows or 5 to 10 people consultancies, but this is really the first big one and the first one of this size that was only focused or mainly focused on service. And again, they changed name. Today they are called Accenture Song, and it's kind of a merge of many different studios. 2018, I have not really the definite year for that word. That's what's always so funny is the Swiss chapter took a bit of time to get out. From what I could find, 2018 is one of the dates that is official, but I saw also other dates, so I'm still figuring this out. But around 2018, the Swiss chapter of the Service Design Network came out, and we're very grateful for all the people that made all the efforts to create this, because it's a huge effort to bring people together, to motivate people to to do this. And also it's all volunteer work, which is something which I always say again, people do that on their spare time. And I think it's quite important that we acknowledge also all the work that was done previously. Another image, we see here mountains, but still very urban. And this is around Lucerne. We have in 2020 the first service design master program at the Hochschule Lucerne, or how the students back there call it the HSLU. So now you have the keyword HSLU. That sounds very, 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 very German. But honestly, it was taught there before, and it was really part of the master design program. But since 2020, it's kind of a standalone program, if you can say it like that, and maybe it's more prominently shown on the diploma. I think quite interesting because it shows that once you have a master degree, I think that gives you also a bit of an idea. And I'm using the voice of our lovely Manuel, if he's here, because he is part of the people who are bringing service design into education. And maybe you have a few other dates to share, for example, of what you guys do in Fjord. I think that will be quite interesting. Maybe you have a few historic events to share with us.
Yeah, we've tried to develop several events related to service design. Just to make a little bit of advertisement for school in Sierra in the mountains, is that our approach for the prototyping phase is really based on theater reenactment. So all the events we're doing in Sierra in the mountains, and I really invite you to come. Also, people from UK, is that we do that in the theater, and the idea is that we can make visible the invisible through the theater reenactment. And I think, Daniele, there will be an event in September talking about this approach. And talking about Swiss service design, we'd like to create an international event next year about young and promising service designer around the world.
Exactly. And to answer Joanna's question, yes, it's a public school, so it's much cheaper than what's usually the case, but the level is very, 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 very good. And if you want to get a bit of a trailer of the approach, again, there will be an event around September, which you can join, and where Manuel will be the person leading the event and sharing a bit of a few examples of how they do that in Sierra. Plus, Sierra is the most sunny place of Switzerland, officially. I lived there for 10 years.
Yeah, in Europe, just a teaser around, we say that Nice, in the south of France, is the sunniest place in Europe, and we say that Sierra, where I am, is the second place. So I don't know if it's been if it's marketing or if it's really based on science, but I like the idea.
That I don't know, but I know that I came from the north of Switzerland, where it's basically shitty weather every day, and then living in Sierra for 10 years, I was amazed how I never saw shitty weather. So that's not science again, but another good reason to go there. Okay, let's continue. And now we are going a bit nearer to the present, and with questions, where do the Swiss service designers work? Here we have data from 2019. In 2019, the Swiss service design network team made a survey with 50 plus Swiss service design practitioners. And this year we got to make that data public and share a bit of a little report. And I'm taking a few elements out of the report, but as you see the slide, whenever there is a link, you can then find the link and go further. And I'll share the presentation with you, obviously, at the end, so that you get all the resources. But let's go in that report. And one thing that is quite interesting is to see that most service design practitioners work in consultancy or in education. Again, it's a small survey. Take it with a big grain of salt. There is not many people who have answered. So don't take the percentages as like, that's exactly the percentage, but it gives you a bit of a feeling. And the feeling that is quite interesting here is to see that the public sector is very, very small. It's the gray part that you see here in the graph. And it's quite small, but interesting to see that the education part is very involved. You can then go into details in the report, but I think that gives us already a few ideas to talk about then the chat part. Then about half of the practitioners work in large organizations. Like the part which is in dark green that you see in the upper left, that's organizations that have around 2,000 people in there. So you see like a quarter of people who have answered that question are working in such big organizations. So we see here the very big organization that really see the need for the service designer, which is a bit of a classical thing with service design around the world. And one thing that we'd love, I think, to fight in Switzerland, maybe bringing service design education also at a lower level so that there might be a service designer also in a bakery working. I think that will be a dream to not have it so only for the big organizations, but also, why not have a barista who works the 50% as a barista and 50% as a service designer and tries to improve things in a cafe. I think that will be something that would be quite interesting in the future. Then we see that most practitioners have less than 10 years of experience, which is quite interesting knowing that service design isn't that old. It's something that is from the 80s officially, if we can say it like that. So still we have a bit of people who have a bit of experience, but still when you see here the graph, it shows that we still have a good chunk of juniors, a good chunk of mid-level, and a good chunk of experienced one, which means that when you go in a big organization where there are service designers, you are not the only one who has knowledge. I think that's something which is interesting to see here, but also to see that it's not just the younger generation who comes in the workplace and which is interested about that topic. But full-time service designers are a minority. This was the question, how much time do you spend on service design? And here we see really the one on the right, which is 100%. There were only very few people who said, this is my main activity in my job. And now, really the present, and we ask ourselves, what's the state of service design today? So this is something that we'd love to explore further with some more in-depth study, but we still have a few anecdotes that we can share here based on a few observations we made. A first observation that we made is that now since we launched the Service Design Network this year, we are tracking every new job that comes out and posting it on the discussion board. And over the 2 months that we've done that, we've seen that basically 2 new service design jobs come out every week. When you compare that, I think, to the UK, if I remember well, that was a statistic from the Service Design Jobs website, servicedesignjobs.com. I think it was 2 jobs a day. So we're still not there. But if you compare to when I came out of my service design education, where there was basically nothing with that title, it's a big change. And I think this is quite interesting to see that these are really job offers that have the term service design either in the role or said as this is a skill that you need or that we are really happy that you have. So I think this is quite interesting for us. Then we have consultancies are always interesting to track because they speak a lot about themselves, or so they are easier to track. We have around 90 consultancies who use service design in Switzerland. At least that's what we were able to find. And from what we could find, just doing some Googling and some some LinkedIn searching. If you look at people who really have the term service design in their job title, we have already 30 people having that, which doesn't mean that it's only so few people who do service design, because a lot of people just do service design under other titles or use it as a skill in other jobs. I think that's something that is quite important, because the maturity of the name service design in Switzerland isn't that big yet, and the skills that a service designer has can definitely be used in many different job titles, but that's just tracking kind of the maturity level of the term also for job titles. And then you might say, hey, is it good money to come to Switzerland to work? And yes and no. We'll get into that. First thing to say, obviously, is that Switzerland is expensive. So even if the salaries look amazing, you still have a lot of costs coming. But this is based on the Service Design Salary Report of 2021, which was made with around 1,000 service designers worldwide, and 7 Swiss service designers answered. So again, take the data with a big grain of salt, because it's not representative, but still it gives us a good anecdote to talk about. And this was done by the website servicedesignjobs.com. What we see here is the average salary compared to the United States on the left and the United Kingdom on the right. And this shows us that people that answered had about 108K per year, with an average of 4 years of experience in the job. So for 4 years of experience, it's not that bad for a Swiss salary, let's say it like that. And then we see that in Switzerland, the salary gap between genders is marked, even in service design jobs. And that's what we see here, with women having 100K per year and men having 111K per year. Again, statistically, take it with a grain of salt. Not many people answered, but still the anecdotal evidence is quite interesting to see here. So let's go in the future now. So if you want to go further, we created a database of 110 tiny historical events that you will be able to get access to. It looks like that. It's basically a lovely designed Notion database, or for those who don't know Notion, it's just a spreadsheet who looks a bit nicer, where you can find stuff. You can find like a big timeline, but then also what we did, we put every historical event in playlists, which then helps you then to see, okay, I'm interested in tourism in Switzerland and service design, then it gives you the related people, the related events, the related organizations, and so that you can then explore a bit more in depth. It's still a very, 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 very prototypey, but for those who it helps, it's awesome, and it's something that you can already access today. If you want to volunteer on improving that, that would be awesome. And if you want to use it and make something else with it, just do it, because that will also help the community. That's basically it for the long presentation, but we had some lovely breaks with Manuel, and just the one question that I will leave is still in the recording, and then I will stop the recording, is what's missing in this history? I think that's the goal, again, of this presentation, is not to say this is the history of service design in Switzerland, but rather to say it's a start of trying to create one. And we just put it out there so that people react by saying, this is wrong, you missed this is not so relevant, because usually it's easier to improve something that starts from scratch. And so what we did was just to create something that people can now improve, hack, and work on.